and welcome to Ungimmicked.
Thank goodness.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very, very special episode because it is the first episode that we have ever recorded where we are not all on different points of the United States because Alex Moreau is sitting right next to me.
Yes, sir.
And we're all jealous.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
So we are also joined, of course, by Connor McDonald, Matthew O'Neill, Sanjeev Vinod. My name is Gonzalo Souza, and let's get into this week's topic. Matthew, what are we going to talk about this week?
Oh my goodness. You saw the title. You know it's about to be spicy. Why do magicians hate themselves? All right.
Talk for yourself.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. I don't hate myself. But here's the thing. There's so many stock lines, stereotypes, and jokes that magicians use about being antisocial nerd losers. So, before we get started on this, what are some of the awful self-deprecating, and that's the word we want to focus on, self-deprecating, stock lines that you've heard yourself or even used yourself? Because I know I've obviously used some in the past.
I got one right off the bat.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, actually, you guys, let me know what you think. It's the one where someone's like, "How did you do that?" And they're like, 13 years with no girlfriend and no friends, or something like that.
Ha!
It's like
It's
13
funny
years locked in
because
the
I'm a
room.
magician.
Yeah,
Guys, get it?
It's like something with no friends.
Get it? Because I practice.
Exactly, but right on that line is the shuffling. Oh, you know the shuffle's called the riffle shuffle. This one is the overhand, and then you do some cool flourish. You know what this is called? This is called 6 months with no girlfriend. It's like,
Oh,
Yeah.
That's pretty
and then the only reaction anybody can have is, "Oh, because he practiced." It's funny. It's funny.
I think it's cringe
Right?
for everyone.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
cringe. It's horrible.
Like I've
right?
never done it, and God help anyone that's ever said it. But could you give me your hand? No, the clean one. If you say that, you are an awful person.
Oh, I've never
okay.
heard that one, but that's just.
I've seen it in person, and it is not okay.
I will say, maybe we'll leave some time for just stock lines in general. What I'm focusing on is just the self-deprecating part.
Let's make an episode where like all the lines you are to not say during your performance.
What if we did a whole episode just of stock lines?
Yeah, that could be
45
interesting.
minutes of stock
45
lines. Honestly, that would be pretty beneficial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
what are more self-deprecating
Every time.
ones?
Oh, are we going to continue with that? Yeah, let's do it one more.
Do you have others?
Or
I
not.
feel like you'd have examples like listed with the preparation for this episode.
Yeah, because I prepared for this episode.
yeah, because you spent a couple weeks without friends, right?
Exactly. But that's a big part of it. Or for example, Connor said the main one, which is Gonzalo said the main one. One of you said the one with 15 years without a girlfriend, or
Yeah.
that's the terrible thing, because we talked about the public perception of magic, and a lot of people think magic is cool, and then you just kill it instantly. So I know every time I see someone play on these stereotypes that I don't think are real, like, or to from an external point of view, I cringe, I sink into my seat, and I feel like the performer hates himself. Do you guys have that sort of reaction to this attitude? And if so, why do you think that is?
The self-deprecating jokes just kind of add to that public perception of magic, where it just like, of course, a lot of people tend to think magic is just the classic kids party magician, because that's like with self-deprecating jokes, because that's what people say and that's what people use and people are exposed to. And I just don't. I think
we do everything to build ourselves up, and that joke tears it all down.
Yeah, the thing is
Everything.
also it's hard for us to judge it because being very accustomed to seeing shows, we've heard these lines many times. So now when we hear them, the reaction we have is like roll your eyes, groan a little bit and go, "Oh, stock lines," But to a layman that hears it for the first time, I'm very curious to see what they feel like. If I were to guess, it's probably like, a little sad, I guess.
They can't tell if it's serious.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's got this sort of bittersweet where like it's not completely humor, but it's not completely true. Like it's sort of nothing. It lives in a really dead zone of information and humor.
On that note, dude, to add on, I think that one caveat to remember is that the use of self-deprecation could work in terms of character. So, for example, Kyle Eschen, I think, is one example that comes to mind, who I love. Personally, I love his style. And I think, to be fair, it works better than others in his case, because when he does it, you can tell that it's a character. You see that it's a joke. While with other magicians, I think it often blends in with who they are trying to portray them. There's no clarity with the character that they want to be on stage. So now you start to think, wait, are they really this sad and lonely? Even if it's not a conscious thought, I think it's a very subconscious thing that might be going on to create an impression of who you are as a performer.
Part of that is like committing to the character, because when Kailash goes on stage, or at least every performance video I've seen on him, he commits 100% to his character. And when you're mentioning when people don't know, is that kind of sad? You have, I guess, the persona of the average magician, one would say, just the person who goes on stage and is relatively confident in what he's doing, and then does a complete 180, saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, I have no friends." It's really...
Well, I think this boils down to, magicians stop thinking too soon. Essentially, is that we believe stock lines. Now, stock lines became stock lines because just people started putting things left and right inappropriately. And like everything, like technique, like patter, like, physical comedy even, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And usually the right way is when you thought about it to know it's the right way. And here, if you just like take lines, even if they're really, really good lines, and you put them, well, it's the bad way to do it. Even if it happens to land and be appropriate, etc., you just got the right result just a little bit by being lucky. I think you have to cultivate the process of knowing how to make things the right way. So eventually you land those positive results a larger amount of the time, and you know why it's a positive result.
Is there a way to do it properly? I mean, I guess there is, because what's the magician you guys named?
Kailash.
Okay, so apparently I don't know who it is, I need to do research, but he can do it properly, but does that mean people should still use them?
He does self-deprecation, not stock lines. That was not what I was referring to.
Okay.
He has at times a self-deprecating character that's brilliantly done, yes.
Okay.
I think then the discussion is going to go a little bit into character work that magicians do, and the fact that going with what you were saying, Alex, of magicians stop thinking too soon. Sometimes it's not. It's hard for us to put that work into our character and to figure out who our character is and what it does and what it feels, and because that is a very hard thing to do. Stock lines worked for this guy, they worked for that guy. I guess they will work for me as well. So it's
there's something though, is that character, I think, is something that is very deeply misunderstood in the world of magic.
Yes.
So I don't want to be out here in the podcast saying, "Oh, figure out if it works for your character," because that doesn't mean shit. There is a very, very subtle very clear differences between a character, a persona, exaggerated versions, your stage you, whatever. And people that are specialized in this talked about it brilliantly. If you take examples of actual characters, you would be talking about Lucy Darling is a character. Pop Hayden is a character. You can figure out examples for yourself. But then you take, take the first magician pops to my mind right now. Joshua J. Is Joshua J. But can you say he's not a character? Well, no, he still has his performing persona. All I mean is I don't want to be here saying, "Oh, figure out if it works for your character," because then a lot of people might not understand these.
This is not me. I'm not incentivating anyone. Oh, just read the stock lines and take a highlighter to that book and say, "Okay, this one worked." No, what I'm trying to say is, or trying to put myself in the shoes of, or I don't have to do that because I've used those stock lines and I know the thinking behind it. The thinking is, I see it working for other people. It's easier than coming up with something myself, and if it gets a quick laugh.
I would say that one thing to consider that I don't think any of us do well enough is a better understanding of what working well means, because I think one perception that it's taken me a long time to realize how wrong it is, all laughs aren't good laughs.
Oh, for sure.
All laughs are not good laughs, and getting a laugh to me is a very low bar to say that a line works. Anything can get a laugh. You can look someone in the eyes for 10 seconds and then say orangutan, and they will probably laugh. That does not.
They just laughed right now.
No, it's a thing. It's a genuine thing, and I think as magicians, maybe it's the stopping thinking too soon, where we see the laugh, we're like, oh, that hit, that stock line works. But I think what we fail to consider is that might not be the type of laugh we want. We might not want a laugh at that beat. We might want a chuckle instead of an out loud laugh, or we might want a laugh at the hilarity of the moment rather than laughing at who the performer is. So many things to consider that I think we don't consider when just shoehorning stock lines into our acts.
For sure. And to answer your question, to me, the definition of how something works well, and I'm saying something as opposed to saying a joke, because it also works for a line, a word, an action, a technique, whatever, if it contributes to the actions you're trying to express. What am I trying to express? Does it contribute? And I'm saying in a very mathematical form with vectors, right? Here you're going along a line. Here I picture it as like a 1D line in a 2D plane.
Yeah.
And here your performance you have to optimize. So maybe if you do something that's going straight, all of that power, all that intention is going straight towards what you're doing. If it's got a slight angle, you only get like the projection onto the horizontal axis is only how much you're progressing. So not everything you're doing has a direct fundamental contribution to what you're trying to express. Now, if you have the arrow the other way, it's the opposite. It's hurting your act, but it can hurt more or less, of course. And then there is a thing that a lot of people have way too much of, is vertical lines that absolutely do not accomplish anything towards what they're trying to express. They're just things that are, most of the times, they're good lines or good techniques or good things, but they put there because they, those are good, without taking context into account. And so I say, as long as that arrow has some sort of component towards that horizontal axis you're trying to reach, then it has contributed. Now you have to look at the effort, right? If you're taking 5 minutes to tell one joke that only contributes very minutely to what you're doing, it's probably not worth doing. Yeah. So I would say if it contributes significantly to what you're trying to accomplish.
Interesting.
Total side note. I think two things. One, I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Two, I think it's just really, I just want to point out, I think it's so interesting that you used like math to talk about stock lines and how they contribute to your act as a character. And that's not a bad thing. That's an amazing thing, because I've just never thought of it that way before, you know, the vectors and how they contribute to the end goal. And it's just a very interesting perspective. So if you're going back and listening to that, it's going to be very difficult to understand, because I was sitting here and he was using the hand motions and I found it very difficult to understand.
I'm sorry.
But, like,
Oh, no.
seriously try. Oh, no, that's not
Check
you.
out
That's just 'cause I'm not-
youtube.com/ungimmicked.
Great point.
Yeah,
But for those that don't
like,
completely understand, let me just make a point clear.
Okay.
If you're trying to go horizontally and you go along an arrow that goes vertically where you're not going horizontal at all, that is essentially what it boils down to.
I'll do a better one. If you're trying to go down the street, right? You're trying to get to the bakery down the street, and if you're jumping, well, you're not getting closer to the bakery.
Exactly.
If you
That's
just-
pretty much what
would
it
those
is.
vertical lines end up being what the stock lines? Is that what they represent?
So yeah, in
That
fact,
are
I believe
used
they're
poorly.
even like a little
They're
backwards
used
for
poorly.
most of them.
Okay.
Because people say, oh, that's a funny line, let me put it in there. But that funny line has nothing to do with what you're trying to do or say, and it sometimes even brings people out of the mood. So it's not inherently bad, although some are, but most of the time it isn't inherently bad, but it accomplishes absolutely nothing. So it's like when you're eating. It's like you're giving something that's very filling for people, but has no nutritional value at all. So it's very unsatisfying from their point of view as well.
Gotcha.
I missed a bit of this, but what I'm sort of gauging off of the tail end of that is that it's all about intent, of course. If it's not your line, that sort of muddies everything. It doesn't sound good coming from you if it's obviously something pre-written.
Well, if it sounds good, it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if
Definitely.
they're not written by
That's
anything else,
interesting,
you're
yeah.
losing control on how they were created and for what purpose they were created. But they can work, but most often than not, people that use them don't really understand what they're for, and therefore, most of the time, that arrow isn't pointing in the right direction at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add that it's not just intent. I think, especially in this scenario, it's also a lot of context. I think context is incredibly important, where even if you make a joke in one of your shows, that same joke might not work in a different of your shows, right? Because each has a different feel, a different atmosphere, a different context that you're trying to create. And although it is a lot more work, I'm sure, I think ease, like you guys mentioned, is a reason we gravitate to stock lines. Although it is more work to think of context in terms of humor, I think the effect on the audience is palpable. I think it's not something that we can just casually ignore if you want to create a show, if you want to create an experience for an audience.
Alex, you touched on it a little bit on the idea that it's not just stock lines. It could be moves. It could be
Words.
movements. It could be words. It could all of that.
Mhm.
That you might be tempted because you've seen it work in case A, B, and C.
Yeah.
It won't necessarily work for you. And you get to so almost summarizing all the things that I've been talking about. If it works, it's purely law of probabilities. It must work at some point.
Yeah, I mean, unless you know what you're doing. But if you know what you're doing, you know what we're talking about here. And if I were to take an example, us magicians, we know very well that you should never put the deck down if you're about to pick it up again.
Mhm.
And that's what it is. Like, the putting the deck down puts you backwards an arrow, then you have to go forward back to that same point while picking it up. Now, take putting the deck down and change it to step forward towards your audience. Now, suddenly you're stepping forward, you're not doing anything of any importance, and you're stepping back. What did that accomplish? You're muddying the whole frame.
So then I guess my question is, say I am a young magician
Mhm.
that's just starting out and I'm starting to perform a lot more. Say I'm going out, doing brunch gigs, stuff like that. Should I use a stock line? Like if I see, I have no character. I'm new. I'm still developing who I am as a magician. Should I be using stock lines or should I just try to just be as organic as possible?
You're probably going to end up using stock lines just by accident and by habit, just because you hear them and you hear them get a laugh. So, sort of naive, well, not naive, but like if you're new to the game, that's sort of the best by default option you have,
It's natural.
and then you'll grow out of it.
I would say by
Okay.
default, try your very, very hardest to not say any of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it's
Because
hard.
usually, most of the time, you actually come up with something that means the same way. You know, like a witty response to something like, "Oh wow, that means the same thing," but it said in my tone of voice, I came up with
Yeah.
it spontaneously. But I would say make the active effort to not use them.
And in order to maybe turn that into a step-by-step thing, it is definitely hard to jump straight into writing your own lines completely from scratch. But I think a baby step that'll actually take you a long way is starting to think about the jokes that are already in your script, the stock lines, sure, that you gravitate towards, and think specifically about the subtext. Subtext is an idea in everything, but I specifically remember reading it. Aussie Wind had a section on the subliminal messages behind a joke, behind a line in either chapter 1 or repertoire. And for example, the subtext to me of any joke along the lines of "this is what I've been doing for 15 years with no friends," I think we intend the subtext to be, "Oh, okay, I practice," which is a good thing. But I think what an unintentional subtext is, "Oh wow, this guy must be sad and lonely and probably a little insecure if he's trying this hard to get a laugh out of me." The subtext of the "oh, not the clean one" is, "wow, this person probably doesn't really interact with real human beings on a regular basis if they think they can say something like that to someone." And again, typically how you see it used is this perfectly nice, amicable person who's just being nice to everyone suddenly out of nowhere is just like, "oh no, the clean one." And you're like, wait, where did that come from? And so you're not even sure if it's serious, if it's meant as a hurtful jab or not. So even if you're going to use the stock lines, I completely understand why you may have started there. But I think a great step is to start thinking, what are you implying to your audience? And is that something you really want to imply? Matt, what were your thoughts on where you wanted this discussion to go?
Well, I was sort of. I'm really happy that it naturally sort of gravitated towards stock lines in general because that's a nice.
Overarching theme,
I don't
I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, overarching theme. I was gonna say round theme because that's
Round.
translation for languages. But another point that I sort of wrote down on my notes here is that when you make a self-deprecating joke about being a nerd or having no friends, it's completely dissonant with exactly what your audience is watching.
What do you mean?
Because I'll continue this, but then I'll elaborate on that a little more. People watch magic that they enjoy and think, "wow, he must," and when people watch magic, they think, "wow, he must have so many friends. This is a cool thing that it once makes people want to be around them," right? And then you say, that move is called no social life, and people think, "is that true? He must be so insecure,"
Yeah.
you know.
we can really feel your hate towards that line.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
God.
think it's the third time you round it back to that one.
It is, but but the thing is, it's sort of the main
It's a
one.
prototype. Yeah.
It is,
yeah.
yeah.
It is, yeah.
And it really
it's
encompasses beautifully the fact that magicians don't like themselves. Sorry to use that, but it's,
Yeah.
I
we know what kind
sorry,
of
you know
kid-
what? I don't think You know what? I think magicians ain't working.
That's what I was about to get to.
Which is so ironic.
That's what I was
'cause-
about to get to.
Rip.
So, because what is it? People know like what kind of kid is sort of attracted to magic, right? The one probably generally not the most popular kid in school, you would say.
Not the
But
athletic
the
kid.
fundamental, exactly. But the fundamental difference is that it's so interesting that they look at it a way to transcend that social ostracization, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And people from the outside look at it in like, wow, they take that and then they're transcending their social ostracization. But since magic is almost easy to do badly, because you can go to a magic shop, you can pick up an invisible deck, perform it badly, and you will get a surprise, a reaction, essentially. People think, wow, I must be a fraud, almost. What do you think of that? That idea
It
of
sort of
feeling
has
like
the
a
opposite
fraud?
effect, right? You're trying to say, I was the awkward kid and I sucked, and now I'm a cool kid, right? But I think it does the opposite effect. It's confirming the fact that we were all awkward kids,
Yeah.
it's playing,
which
playing into
is
that.
I don't believe true.
It's a weighty discussion. Okay.
It's a discussion that we will continue after the break.
After we plug the social media.
Yeah. The social media. Do you want to do the social media?
Today is a groundbreaking down so many levels.
He's on in the studio with me.
So the rule is now not Gonzalo plugging, but the plug has to be done through this very mic. Then it works.
Yeah.
That is
Okay,
it.
awesome. So if you're listening, please feel free to connect with us on social media. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and those two you can look up Ungimmicked. Notice the D there,
Oh
And
my
you-
You can
God,
pronounce it
Sounds
bless,
beautiful.
dude.
and you spell that Ungimmicked. So you can
Wow.
hit us up and make sure to make all those discussions transcend the screens. We'll be very happy to talk about it. Now, if you wanted to hear previous episodes, well, I would suggest you maybe hop on Spotify. But wait a second, maybe you don't have Spotify. Well, in that case, you know what you absolutely do have is access to YouTube. Then hop on YouTube and listen to that. But wait a second, I want to go for a run and I can't have the video up as I'm listening. Well, maybe I could suggest you use Apple Podcasts. You can find us on all of those platforms. And
Many more. And many more.
Alex,
Supply
you
and
need to
demand,
take-
my friend.
Alex, you need to take that mic back to Washington, D.C.
There are no excuses.
Dude, I was watching Gonzalo the whole time, and he was just sitting in the corner like a sad puppy, like, okay, do my thing. And I was like, Gonzalo, we love your voice, we promise.
okay, so anyway, guys, make sure you do it. And you know what? Even if you listen to all three of those and you're like, wow, these guys do a good job. Well, maybe you'd like to support us. And just know that we're very glad to give you all this content for free. But if you're feeling a little generous, please hop onto Patreon. You can find us under Ungimmicked, spelled just the same way. And we'd be very happy to use potential donations to improve our setup. Make sure we can have beautiful voices, great sound, and make sure we're always delivering those quality podcasts.
Specifically, Connor's lighting is already much better, but none of us
Hey,
really
we're
like that
small
window,
steps.
and we don't know how to tell him about it. So,
So we need
get
to buy
that
him a
window
sledgehammer.
Oh yeah, a sledgehammer. I actually
To
like
break
that
the
even
window.
better. Yeah. That's
So the
what
next
I like.
goal for donations is making sure we don't have that backline on Connor's video.
You're saying the next
It
goal
won't
as
be
if
there.
we've hit any of the goals.
It is the next goal.
Yeah, as if
Hey,
we've got
Alex and
any
I
other
did get
goals.
haircuts.
We did.
That's right, but we still
On
haven't
credit.
gotten back your hair.
Oh.
That's true.
That's right.
Okay, well, regardless, before going, I'm sorry. Wow, it's pretty hard. It's a hard job.
It is a hard job.
Before we keep going on.
There's a lot to remember.
En anglais.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, dude. Peut-être on peut continuer en français, perhaps in English, Spanish, and no. Seriously, before we get on with the discussion, I think we have a segment that today will be presented by.
It's me. It's you. do you want to do it? No, you can do it.
Okay, I'll do
Bring the
it.
cramp. I'm not going to steal it
Well,
from you.
Wow.
these beautiful gentlemen are all junior castle members, and junior castle member is a wonderful program that allows for young magicians to develop themselves. So if you're a young magician,
World famous Junior Castle.
I'm sorry, junior program of the Magic Castle. How'd you guys exactly name it?
I think that's it.
Yeah,
That's the full name.
that's-
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, well, so if you're a young magician, I believe it's between 10 and 20.
12 20.
12 to 20. I would suggest you get in contact with the castle, or maybe get in contact with one of my podcast co-workers and friends, and get onto them. And while one of their meetings, something came up, and I happened to be eavesdropping. That said that right now the castle, the world famous Magic Castle in Los Angeles, is doing a program where you can still see some magic, although you can't physically see magic here. But what's the catch? You're gonna tell me. There is no catch, and there's even an extra bonus. You're gonna have some great food. If you get a castle meal, you will get access to Zoom shows included with your meal. So make sure to get that great food and some wonderful magic, and make sure you keep all of that energy stocked up for when it opens for real, and then we can all go there and have the time of our lives.
Oh, this guy went into full salesman mode.
Hey,
He's been
man.
writing this. He's been
how you
writing
do
this
it,
for
man.
months. Yeah, it's
Oh,
finally all here.
Fantastic.
You know what? Because I'm enjoying the opportunity to do this, because it probably won't be every time. So I am really enjoying.
Yeah. We should ask the castle for some sponsorship after this point.
Yeah. An ungimmicked fund. Interesting. David.
If you're listening.
But it's true that we're saying this completely independently. We just think the castle's a wonderful.
Yeah,
it's
do.
probably
We
the
do,
best
we do.
place in the world to watch
Yeah,
some magic.
It saved my life. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and
Seriously,
it's
it made
put
us
my
all so much
life
better.
in the path of magic. So,
I wouldn't know any of you.
well,
Yeah.
Well, am I the one? So I'm the one to be supposed.
You're the
Gentlemen,
yeah, there we go.
I said it. So, gentlemen, we are gonna keep on with the discussion. I believe Matthew, it is your subject, and I'm sure you had something you wanted to push us towards.
Yeah, Darren Brown. Ha!
That's a good-
I
that's a
love
good way to
that
be
guy.
pushed.
By the way, Darren Brown, he's so good. All right. So I just wanted to say that. So Darren Brown said, magic is really attractive to the sort of person that, like we mentioned previously, that might not be the most popular kid in school, and because of the fact that it is a relatively quick path to admiration. And why do magicians keep telling these jokes as if to destroy all of the confidence that they've apparently faked to build up in the first place?
Dude, I loved something you said earlier. You said, one of you, I don't remember who, you're all brilliant, unfortunately. I think one of you said that it's because we don't like working. And I think that's an excellent point. And I think it's a habit that's built along what Matt said, that magic is, for better or for worse, an easier way to get good or to get reactions from people. Whether it's good or not, that's not a question we ask ourselves. We do the trick and then people are like, wow, for like 10 seconds. And we're like,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
that was really easy. I think tricks and the way we approach them when we start out magic makes us think that, oh, this is easy. You just learn a new trick. You just buy a new trick and boom, instant amazement, instant charisma in a bottle, which is coincidentally how some specific magic companies also market charisma in a bottle. But I think that now extends to when we move further in Magic 2. We think, oh, this joke gets a reaction. And so self-deprecation is, I think, probably one of the easiest forms of humor to move to do badly, at least. And I would say that's possibly a cause.
You unlock something really interesting. Almost literally every activity,
Mhm.
you start bad and then you get good,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
In Magic, from an outside perspective, you start kind of good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that touches on
Kinda
a
good.
point that we've touched on a previous episode. I'm sorry, I think it might have been the public perception of magic. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
But it's about the... no, it's about the things being out of the box.
What do you mean?
No, the fact that tricks are marketed.
Oh,
as-
yeah.
Ah,
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
that was
man. Yes.
Our brainstorm to get a name for this podcast touched a lot on that, and the fact
Yeah.
that everything is ungimmicked, no slights, no moves, no,
No bad
anything,
angles,
self-working, no
Yeah.
bad. So it's like, okay, then you set it on the table, and magic kind of spews out of
Perform
it.
right out of the box. That line is
Yeah.
so
By the
many
way, just
vibes,
before
man.
we keep going on, there's some.
Almost every magician, I did it 5 minutes. I was able to perform it 5 minutes after practice.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I've heard during lecturers say, yeah, and you see all those guys like running into magic shops 5 minutes before their gigs to grab their next trick. I have a genuine question. Does anyone do that? Because
No
that
way.
sounds like
does that, but you shouldn't.
Sounds dumb.
because
Yeah, don't
once
know.
again I think that might be a cliche that we were also putting, like every time we're lecturing, we're putting that degrading cliche to ourselves. Because I don't think it's as widespread and as
I've
some
never
people.
seen it ever. I mean,
I've never
buying
seen it,
that
but I've
box,
heard
never
it
heard
so
that.
many times.
dude, as an emergency, sure.
anxiety-inducing.
If you need a deck suddenly, or if one of your props breaks, but it's a prepared, scripted segment of your act, sure. You don't buy tricks and then put them into your act 5 minutes before. That I think it has.
So yeah,
horrible
I believe I've
implications.
heard it many times, and I would suggest you rewatch some lectures and just keep your ear out for that,
That's sad,
because that
man.
might be a cliche, one of the cliches we are talking about right now.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine a dancer before a performance is just with their choreographer backstage? Is 5 minutes for curtains to open?
Hey,
They're like,
I shared a
"What's-
twist.
what's-
I shared a twist.
Yeah,
a
dude,
flip.
give me a couple steps. Just give me a couple cool ones, that people will be like, ah, yeah, dude, yeah, really.
Imagine going to a dance shop
Okay.
and like buying
And buying
the
dance moves.
No
illusionist-
moves. Good from every angle. Oh, jeez. It's unseen, man, in any other art form, and I think obviously that's dependent on the context of the art form. But I think if we want to hold ourselves to that definition, we need to try a little harder, man, or at least stop making jokes that say that we're not trying hard, even in cases that we are, like that lecture joke, Alex. I like that, dude. That was a good example.
Yeah, that was a very good example. I think the connection between
Really interesting.
buying a trick out of the box and using stock lines, I think that's a fantastic connection that
Yeah.
I didn't
That's,
make.
Sort of where I wanted to bring it back. Just the idea of, well, like Alex mentioned, not working hard enough.
Mhm.
Because it feels as if you have these two clashing ideas of a magician's outer perspective being so, what's the word? Artificially elevated,
Interesting.
and their inner perspective being so radically diminished. If that makes sense.
So you're saying...
And it's
Sorry, you finish. Go ahead.
no, it's just an interesting contrast about magicians almost feeling it's like they're letting it slip that they have low self-esteem
Yeah,
when they're doing
that's
this.
what I got. I was like, that sounds like an imposter syndrome type thing. I think one of you touched on it
Yes.
earlier too, where maybe because we are getting so much acclaim out of something that to us is little to no effort, we sort of feel, oh, maybe I don't deserve this, and then that's maybe genuinely leaking out in the self-deprecating humor. Are you saying that's a possible cause?
I'm thinking that I'm thinking
Interesting.
not like a Freudian slip, but where they're thinking
Interesting.
it feels subconsciously like, oh, this is wrong because I know I didn't put enough effort in it, but all these people are like smiling, they're clapping for me.
Mhm.
I think you're diving too deep into magician psychology.
No,
I think
I think
I
I know.
like
I
it.
think
I think
it's
it's
an
great.
interesting point, but and makes perfect sense. But I honestly think they go hand in hand, and not one causes the other. I think that since
Oh,
tricks
but they're
are
saying one causes the other?
I thought
no,
one
no, no,
caused
no.
the
I'm saying that
other.
one follows from the other.
Would
What I'm
assume.
saying is that they work together, or I would argue
Makes
that they
sense.
work together. The tricks are easy to do and out of the box. So are the lines. So it's perfect. It's no work to be
Yeah.
done all across the board. So maybe it's much more interesting to think that it's because of maybe we feel guilty, so we use those. Much more romantic for sure. I honestly think
Wait.
it's just because we're lazy all across the board.
Question. I think another potential factor that contributes to this is magic is arguably the only art which has secretiveness as a fundamental part of how it works. And when you look at the tricks that are commonly exposed, like for example, when a layman says, "Oh, I know this one card trick," it's typically one with a self-working, mathematical, dealing into piles, no thought, no effort, no moves, ungimmicked, right out of the box, that type of effect, right? So in an art that's so saturated with secrets, the few that leak into the outside world kind of portray a really bad perception of what the rest of the secrets are, right? Because that's the only data points that people have to work off of. And oh, if this one secret that I've heard of is this pathetic, whoa, maybe so many other magic secrets are this simple and easy and no effort, and that might add to it.
that is
But what
that
if
is what
they
we call the
think-
survivor's bias, by the way.
Yes.
You
The
only-
ones
you-
that are exposed.
Yeah, you
are the
only
ones
get
that-
access when
yeah.
you're exposed, and you have to draw conclusions on the ones that aren't.
Would one also possibly logically come to the conclusion, or at least naturally come to the conclusion that, oh, it must be only the bad secrets that get exposed? Because I still don't know how David Copperfield disappears a car midair.
I assume people would make that deduction. that there is still a quality inherent in magic, and that quality extends to the quality of the secret. But I don't know how one-to-one that is, right? Like invisible deck, for example. Okay, that's not a great example because it's a beautifully intricate method, whatever. But I'm sure we can all think of tricks that have a relatively simple method that plays so big, that can be done so impactfully.
See, but I don't think invisible deck is a commonly known.
It's not common.
It's not at all.
No.
But it's a simple-ish method, I would.
No, it is.
Talking about methods relating to that, I had a discussion with David Regal, one-on-one at some point, and we talked a little bit about magic. We talked about what is to him the most important thing. And at some point, I don't know, on an unrelated tangent, we were talking about card to pocket. So when you're a kid in Magic and you get a Magic book, and it tells, well, if you want to make a card appear in your pocket, at some point you hide the card in your hand and you place it in your pocket.
Yeah.
And it sounds impossible. It sounds stupid. Like, first of all, that would be way too obvious. And number two, everyone would know. That's what I'm doing. And then he says, but no, it is the best method to do it. It is unequivocally the best way to accomplish it. So there is, it just is this beautiful thing of maybe there are secrets that are too good to be told because they're not good enough to be told.
Oh, that's good.
Interesting.
Nice. That's nice.
And then that goes back to what does it say about the ones that are told,
yeah,
and the ones that do get sort of widespread. Like, I don't know, the 21 card trick. It's not a great card trick, but it's really easy, I guess.
Don't
There's a
know.
lot of dealing involved.
Those are mathematical principles. So it's
Yeah. What do you deal? Do you deal all 21 cards 3 times? What's that?
You do.
60
Yeah.
cards dealt.
yeah,
That's a lot
63
of
cards
dealing.
are dealt.
Exactly.
Ouch.
But yeah, so, and you have the other ones, right? And you hear it sometimes during lectures, some magicians say, oh, you know what, the method's even better than the effect. And here, this explores our fascination of methods, because I think magicians experience methods in a similar way that laymen experience effects.
Dude, yes. Yeah.
You know what this idea touches on? It touches on a conversation that we were having, and if I may bring it back to the Junior Society of the Magic Castle, about the way that a magician's best audience is an audience of
yeah.
magicians.
Mm-hmm.
And we with that discussion led to a point. One of them was that magicians appreciate different things than laymen, and I think you've just said exactly what it is. When we are looking at a magic performance, not only are you enjoying the presentation, the character work, the magic in itself, but part of it is the genius behind whatever was made.
There is something now we can all sort of tie everything back together. This is amazing because
Wait, to define a term very quickly, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Because there might be, I don't know if we've ever done this before, for maybe non-magicians listening. When we use the term layman, we're referring to people who are not
We're
magicians.
referring to you.
Yeah, we're referring to you.
Muggles.
exactly. But
I don't like that word.
so put everything back to point. So as you guys were having that conversation, Gonzalo was muting his microphone so we could just debate back and forth on it. And I came to a conclusion. Once again, I'm more of a hypothesis than a conclusion.
What?
And I said, I believe an audience of magicians is the easiest, best audience to have. Because you inherently have to put work in a method to perform it for magicians.
Exactly.
You don't have to put work on your script. And they become an easy audience because they are looking something which there is inherent work. And it's a way harder for a layman's audience to be an amazing audience because they're exposed to something where work isn't quite as current than it should be.
Present.
So yeah.
Present.
Well, that is if all else fails, at least if you have magicians in front of you, if you have no script, if your character is annoying or detestable, whatever it is,
But you do good magic.
you are doing even if it isn't good magic
even-
or the methods are not good, there is something for the magicians to try to enjoy.
Hey, hear me out. Something interesting, because we were drawing the parallel about people appreciating effects and magicians appreciating methods. What are the differences? This is an open question. I'm not too sure what I think about this. About performing a trick for laymen that has an insane method and no script, and performing for magicians was a wonderful story, a beautiful script, and a stupid method.
Neither cares, dude. Like, I think magicians are
Um,
historically bad. Like, if I can confess guilty to this, if I see an ambitious card that's beautifully presented, perfectly logical, great structure, great emotionally, whatever, I would probably leave it saying, "Oh, he did an ambitious card," and then blah blah, and then move on. Um,
I think there's two ways to look at that though,
mhm.
because on one hand you do have common methods that everyone knows, but also I think what Alex was maybe saying was that the the plot, the story that he brings to the table is very very interesting, but the method is dumb, but not necessarily predictable. Is that right, Alex?
No, I'm just sort of thinking of it like there's a little bit like when an audience is seeing a magic trick where the presentation is awful, they don't really give a shit about
Yeah.
the script, and it's also a little bit concerning. Like, okay, this is okay, yeah, the jokers are okay, they're policemen. Oh wow, and now you're
Yeah.
drawing the parallel
was-
with magicians, with what? With magicians looking at another magician performing, he has a beautiful story, but he's doing a very basic method. And I don't want to be here like talking
Actually,
about
I
method
would appreciate
oh,
the story maybe.
openly.
I would appreciate.
But
the
wait a
work that
second,
put
and
into the
here
story.
you have sort of the same thing, where one they're overlooking what you have worked on, which here happens to be the script as opposed to the method, and they're focusing, and it's a little bit also condescending. Oh, you're doing that move. Okay, so you just started, right?
Yeah. It is
So
a little
I would do that
condescending,
other one. It's way better, you know. So I think we can draw more parallels than we'd even think we can.
Mm,
So eventually, I think all boils down to guilt and ego,
Yeah.
rip,
and that's maybe why we hate ourselves.
rip.
Ouch.
Wait, Matt, question for you. Did you have ideas on, because we're nearing the end of the segment here, did you have ideas on solutions or at least approaches? We touched on a few, like thinking about subtext,
Yeah.
starting to try using your own lines. What are your thoughts?
Definitely, definitely one big one that I was thinking about, but also Alex touched on, which is try harder, man. Like put
That's not good.
no, but I know, but this is just big conceptually. You got to put your heart and your soul into it.
Fair.
Because you can't half-ass it. You can't expect to do a good performance half-assing it.
Just
You
know
got to
that sometimes you're so emotionally connected with things you create that then the moment you perform it, it's so much more beautiful. When we create pieces for our own shows,
It's so
something that really
satisfying,
was
man.
born
That's
out
true.
of that exact need, of that exact moment.
But also it's
It's
hard.
wonderful.
Like
It
it's
is hard.
painful.
But you know what? I think the
it's born out of the pain.
final result is its own reward, and I believe I'm seeing a little bit of that quote from Teller. So I'm
Yeah.
saying once you experience that reward, you know how much it was worth it. So I would say just force yourself to work really fucking hard on one trick,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually you'll see what it does. And I think then that work will become a lot more not as stringent on you.
And lastest point regarding seeing what it does, just remember all reactions are not good reactions. All laughs are not good laughs.
That is a very
Yeah.
good way, a very
Yeah.
good comment
That's
to
true.
finish on.
Gee,
Because
thank you, though,
gentlemen,
for- yeah.
this is
Yeah.
we have reached
Yeah.
not the end yet.
So
because
fun,
before
boys.
the end,
Oh.
before the end, we do have an assembly to go to,
Oh.
and that this week goes to Mr. Sanjeev
That
Vinod.
is me. Yes. So today we talked about a lot of things, and specifically we talked about jokes and deprecating humor. I was like, oh wow. At least for me, one person who I love a lot in that field is Bo Burnham. I think Bo Burnham's incredible, and Bo Burnham's, to me, I think what really strikes me about his performance is that I will admit I don't know the exact vocabulary, if whether it's character or persona, and I apologize for that. But to me, his character on stage is, I think, very carefully curated, and he sticks to it. He establishes these boundaries, these ways that he's gonna act. And although to me so much of comedy is subversion of expectation, I think his character is never really subverted. He doesn't do something that you're like, oh, Bo wouldn't do that. Why did he do that? That never strikes me, and I think that's incredible. And his interviews too. What a thinker. And that's something I really respect. So I highly recommend to you all, go watch Bo Burnham's specials. A lot of them are on YouTube, which is great. There's there's Make Happy. And also check out some of his interviews, because I think it'll give you a look into how much contrast there is between that stage persona and, I guess you can say, who he is in real life. And there's a man who, at least for me, when I see him be self-deprecating, I don't think, wow, what a pathetic loser. I think, wow, I love this guy.
Because he commits to the character, possibly.
Probably,
right?
probably.
And because he knows when and why to be self-depreciating.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah,
With
G,
that,
all yours.
follow us on the socials, give us money on Patreon, and tune in next week for another episode.
I think my cat was better.
Arguably.
How about we do it together?
We'll do it together. Huh? 1, 2, 3.
What are we even
What are we-
saying?
Oh my God. Like,
Join
what
us next
happened?
week on Ungimmicked.
Join us next week on Ungimmicked.
Join us next week on Ungimmicked.